would be tempting to believe that historical cities like Jogja, Yogyakarta, or Solo, Surakarta, are the most haunted places in Indonesia. Others may point to somewhere in Kalimantan or Bali, with their own magical traditions. But Jakarta, still the capital of Indonesia, at least for now, has seen far more than its share of bloodshed and horror during its long history. Violent riots bookmarking periods of oppressive colonialism, a brutal dictatorship and revolution, not to mention the usual mix of murders, suicides and unimaginable tragedies that befall any large metropolis over time. And maybe it is this dark history, or the prevalence of ilmu hitam, black magic in Jakarta, as opposed to the black high magic or mysticism of other areas, which leads to Jakarta seemingly having so many ghosts. There is no shortage of sources for scary stories in Jakarta, but out of the thousands of tales of terror this city holds, there are a few that have become urban legends, turning some of the city's most iconic landmarks into notorious supernatural hotspots. Many have inspired their own horror movies and TV shows, and maybe this is another reason for Jakarta being so seemingly haunted. The other thing which makes me somewhat sceptical is that much of historic Jakarta has been destroyed, and central areas are like metropolises the world over, full of high towers and large roads. The majority of ghost stories come from its affluent suburbs, many of which would have been farmland at the time of independence. Indeed, most only developed over the last 50 years. I'm aware of ghost stories being started in Indonesia for commercial or political gain, such as starting a rumour about a rival business being haunted, an attribute which is undoubtedly related to the prevalence of black magic in Jakarta. And thus I have to say I'm highly sceptical regarding many of these stories. The Ancol Bridge, located on Jan Ari Mata Dinata in Ancol, is also known as Jambatan Goyang, rocking bridge, because drivers who drive on it feel a rocking sensation. It's supposed to be one of the most haunted bridges in Ancol, which is in North Jakarta. Goyang Bridge is famous for its spirit, often called Siti Arya, although the ghost's real name is Siti Anisha. Legend has it that Siti Anisha was a young girl in the early 19th century who was kidnapped, raped and murdered. Her body was dumped in rice fields some 40 metres away from what is now the Goyang Bridge. Siti's ghost, which is sometimes called Mariam, is said to appear on the bridge at night wearing a white dress, or sometimes it's said to be a black kabaya, a traditional lace top. The urban legend about her says that she has caused many drivers going past the bridge to get into fatal accidents. Alternatively, she lived in a pavilion with her mother and sister. Her beauty attracted the attention of the landlord, and he asked for her hand in marriage. Siti became collateral in her mother's debt to Jogan Tambas in 1817. However, they could not repay the debt. Siti was forced to become Jurgen's young wife. Siti's lover did not. Siti's boyfriend did not accept it, which led to the death of the two lovers. Siti's body was dumped from the Ancol Bridge, while the location of her sweetheart Karim's body is unknown. Siti, who never feels like she is dead, wanders around looking for her lover. He also didn't feel calm because he didn't at the time apologise and say goodbye to his mother after a proposal to become debt guarantee ended in disaster. A further addition was that escaping was her only way out of marriage, but unfortunately she met another landlord by the name of Oi Tambahasia while she escaped. He owned a villa at Bintang Mas in the Ancol district. He too became entranced by her beauty and sought her for a mistress. In the process of that, he sent 2 of his guards to capture her. Unfortunately, she died in the struggle and was thrown under the bridge as a result. A lot of people claim that they have even seen Mariam's ghost at Ancol Bridge. It's said that the spirit often reveals herself between the time period of the 1960s and the 1970s. At that time, the locals still bred fish in the area of Ancol Bridge. And on one particular evening, the wind blew gently and a man was canoeing under the bridge in the silver moonlight. Suddenly, a young girl waved at the man to take her across the river. After the girl left, the man was so surprised to see that the money paid to him was indeed a few pieces of green leaves. In 1985, Bar Broto, a professional artist, said that a beautiful girl came to his stall for creating an oil painting of herself. The artist intuitively sensed something was wrong, but still accepted the offer. When the oil painting was half done, Bar Broto asked permission to go to the toilet. When he came back, the young lady had already left. And Bar Broto asked the artist next to his stall whether he saw the young lady. His friend pointed in the direction where she was going. He saw the young lady walking without touching the ground. Bar Broto and his friend believed this to be the mysterious young lady, Miriam. Pa Anshori ran a cigarette kiosk near Ancol Bridge, and he usually kept his kiosk open until 1 o'clock in the morning. It was drizzling in the early morning, so the Ancol Bridge looked darker and spookier at that very moment. All of a sudden he saw a young lady coming and smiled at him. While it was about 50 metres distance, Pa Anshori asked her what she wanted to buy. Much to his surprise, the lady disappeared, just in a single blink. It is said that Yoto, a motorbike taxi driver, was so unlucky while he was waiting for passengers at 5 a.m. Whilst he was feeling sleepy, a woman approached him and asked her to take him to Ancol Bridge. On the way, Yoto tried to break the ice by talking to the girl sitting behind him. The girl remained silent. Not even a word came out of her mouth. When they arrived at the destination, Yoto was so surprised after knowing the girl had already disappeared. He was scared and left the place in a hurry. City appears numerous times at the bridge, and as a result there's been increased number of accidents at the bridge, in which she suddenly appears and causes drivers to lose focus. There's even a belief that drivers should give a honk while they are crossing the bridge. She also has a room reserved just for her at the nearby Horizon Hotel Horizon. The story goes that the woman appears frequently at the hotel. As time goes by, there are stories heard that the management of the hotel has reserved a room just for her to reside at the hotel. In the past around the area, people have suspected that the bridge was once a place where children of jinn were thrown in after being born. And when we were particularly troubled by black magic, we performed a ritual near the bridge, which involved throwing items of our clothing and small amounts of money into the Java Sea. The Jakarta History Museum, also known as Fatalaya Museum or Batavian Museum, is located in the old town known as Kota Tua of Jakarta. The building was built in 1710 as the Stadhuis City Hall of Batavia. Jakarta History Museum opened in 1974 and displays objects from the prehistory period of the city region, the founding of Jakarta in 1527, and a Dutch colonisation period from the 16th century until Indonesia's independence in 1945. It is believed to be haunted by ghosts because it was the site of hangings by the Dutch of Indonesian and Chinese prisoners. At night or quiet days, people say an apparition of a man dressed in colonial uniform or painful shrieks of prisoners are heard from the dungeon, according to an urban legend. Toko Merah is a Dutch colonial building located in Jakarta Old Town and was built by the colonial General Gustav Willem van Imhoff and later owned by Chinese-Dutch landlord Oi Liao Kong. In 1730, it is one of the oldest buildings in Jakarta. The building is located on the west side of the main canal Kalibata. The building's red colour contributes to its current name. The building was known to be on the site of the 1740 Batavian massacre, where the building was used for the torture and killing at the time. And many locals reported the sound of screaming at night and sighting a Dutch lady in a white gown. The Taman Prasasti Museum is a Dutch heritage museum located in Tanah Abang, Jakarta. The museum is really a cemetery which closed as a cemetery in 1974. Built by the Dutch colonial government in 1795 as a final resting place for noble Dutchmen. Several important people were buried at the cemetery, including Olivia Marianne Raffles, the first wife of British Governor General Stamford Raffles, and Chinese-Indonesian youth activist So Hokkye. The cemetery area is the oldest of its kind in Jakarta and has been and may have been the oldest modern cemetery in the world. For example, the Pierre Lanchet Museum, 1803 in Paris, is a few years later. Although it is a Christian cemetery, there are coffins of Indonesia's first president, Sukarno. It's kept there along with that of his vice president, Hatta. There is a story that the museum stores human skulls. Apparently visitors saw a skull in the museum, which brought tears to their eyes. However, all the remains were apparently returned to their families, cremated or moved to Tabas Kusia Cemetery in South Jakarta. It's a popular place with Jakarta's Goth community, who have their photos taken next to the more elaborate graves. The Dr. Cipto Mangunkusumo Hospital used to be the principal public hospital of Java in the pre-independence times. It is another reported ghost sighting local, where at night a doctor is seen with a surgery knife and hands covered with blood, with nurses screaming for help. The hospital was established in 1919 as the Central Civic Hospital, which has undergone various changes in name and status since then. Since 1964, the name Cipto Mangunkusumo, an Indonesian independence leader and Sukarno's political mentor. It's a government-run general hospital, as well as serving as a teaching hospital for the University of Indonesia. A boy called Raman apparently saw Ngesot Sister ghost in the hospital ward while waiting for his father. A nurse with her clothes were filthy and full of tears was talking to herself. At first, Raman believed the nurse to be a lunatic, Fikirnya, since she talked to herself. Casablanca Tunnel is built on a cemetery in South Jakarta. It's said that drivers must honk 3 times as they pass through the tunnel at night to prevent the Kuntilanak Merah, a red-robed, long-haired female apparition, appearing and standing before their cars. If they don't, they may see the woman's ghost suddenly appear in the dark shadows of the tunnel, something which has supposedly led many drivers to their doom. Some that say that she was in fact a female companion of a Dutch officer or soldier in colonial times. When the roads and tunnel were built on the cemetery, the workers disinterred all the skeletons except hers, which was undecomposed. According to some motorcyclists, they smell the fragrance of rose and frangipani. All of a sudden, the temperature becomes colder at the time they pass through the tunnel at midnight. Their honking is a way of asking permission to pass through the ghost territory. Alternatively, the tunnel caused many angry spirits to be disturbed, most infamously a ghost of a woman who's said to have been buried alive by her boyfriend after he found out she was pregnant. In addition, there have been reported sightings of a ghost of a man who died by suicide in the tunnel. It is said that he hanged himself in the tunnel using a folded banner, and his ghost has haunted the tunnel ever since. Some drivers claimed that they'd seen a Pontianak in white clothes waving at them. Legend has it that the woman had been a rape victim and was killed by a group of criminals long before the underpass was built. The ghost always reveals herself as a wrinkled old woman with one of her eyes hanging out of its socket. Though the crime took place hundreds of years ago, she is there still waiting to get her revenge. A rumour has surfaced that there's a spirit of a hanged man at the entrance of Jakarta Casablanca Tunnel. The hanged man often shows himself when it's full moon. Lake TMP Kalibata is often a fishing spot for the public, but is known as one of the most haunted attractions in Jakarta. Kalibata Cemetery is a military cemetery known as Heroes Cemetery, being when Indonesia's national heroes are buried. It was built in 1953 and opened on the 10th of November 1954. According to stories, local people often see the figure of a small child. Saidah Tower is an abandoned building on Jalan MT Haryono in Jakarta. The building consists of 28 floors, was inaugurated in 1998, and its name was taken from its owner, Saidah Abu Bakar Ibrahim. However, the Saidah Tower has been abandoned since 2007. It's believed this was due to the tower sloping somewhat due to subsidence. Because of this, there are many horror stories that are spread amongst people. One is related to the figure of a Kuntilanak, who is said to stay or inhabit the 14th floor of the building. The building stands tall in a grey Roman-style architecture, surrounded by a zinc fence, barring people from going inside. Its walls have started decaying, the paint is faded, and a lot of the windows are broken. As years passed, the dilapidated building started gaining an infamous reputation as one of the most haunted places in the capital city, luring many horror fans to view its empty rooms. Following its abandonment, a woman in red asked a security guard to escort her to the 14th floor to pick up what was left behind. After the elevator arrived at the 14th floor, the woman disappeared in the dark room, and security heard someone typing in one of the empty offices. Before long, the sound of laughing without a figure as if it was approaching the security guard made him choose the emergency stairs to get out. From above, the laughter continued to chase the frightened security guard down the stairs, until finally, when on the 3rd floor, the security guard's hand was caught by something. It turned out that it was only a hand, and that was holding the security guard's hand. After all electricity in the building was cut by the local power company, leaving the building in complete darkness, strangely on several nights it was seen that one of the rooms in the building was lit up randomly. An electrician who received the odd report came to the building many times to ensure there was no more electricity connected to the building, and that the entire building was confirmed empty. Until now, there's still a report that something there is still a light coming on from one of the rooms in the building. There were even reports that someone on the middle floor of the building was standing watching people on the opposite side of the building in the morning. When the building was vacated, no security guard dared to go to the basement parking lot of the building. Often they had a large crowd of people passing by in the empty basement, and it's not uncommon for security guards to come into contact with something that is not visible. One night, someone who was challenged to be a ghost hunter in the abandoned building entered the building, but it was only on the entrance park that he was already scared to death. A figure resembling a large bat hung from the roof, and no one else could see it other than him. On the 3rd floor there was a canteen. After being vacated, some saw a coffin located in front of the canteen. No one knows how a coffin that size got there, but after checking again, the coffin disappeared. It's not uncommon for online motorcycle taxis, OJECs, to get orders from the tower at night. Every time an OJEC came at around 11 p.m, waited and called several times at the front, but never picked up. The Lubang Buaya well is a part of the monument enshrined in the Lubang Buaya Museum. On the 31st of May 1965, President Sukarno called for the establishment of a fist force, in addition to the 3 armed forces, the Army, Navy and Air Force, and the police, to be made up of workers and peasants. This attracted strong opposition from Army Commander Ahmadiyani, but soon training commenced at the swampy region near Halim, called Lubang Buaya. It was under the control of Major Sujuno, commander of the Halim Base Ground Defence. Among the participants were allegedly members of the PKI affiliated youth group Pemila Rakyat. That's the Indonesian Communist Party, or Partai Komunis Indonesia, banned and brutally suppressed since the military coup. In the early hours of the 1st of October 1965, members of the 30th September movement allegedly left their base at Lubang Buaya on a mission to kidnap 7 generals, all members of the Army General Staff. Later that night they returned, bringing the bodies of 3 generals who had been killed in the kidnap attempts, as well as 4 living prisoners. The survivors were subsequently killed and 7 bodies thrown down a disused well. On the 4th of October, the bodies were recovered using special equipment, with Suharto personally supervising the operation. This is one of the most famous events in Indonesia's political struggle, as it's thought to be one of the events that led to President Sukarno's coup and a military overtake of the country. The 7 generals who died were given honours to being heroes of the revolution. Even today, Indonesians are expected to watch movies and listen to stories of the military's interpretation of events. The museum offers a room dedicated especially for the images and clothes they wore during the death. In the middle of the room there's a duplicate well that was used to bury the bodies. Many hear cries coming from this duplicate well. A visitor even witnessed a soldier with a disfigured face covered with blood crawling out of the well. Some other oddities include the clothes that smelt of blood to this day and cases of possessions that are fairly common in the museum. There's a number of other buildings in the vicinity, including one which the kidnapped generals were allegedly mistreated, containing a life-size diorama of torture, the movement's command post and the canteen. You may have picked up that I'm highly sceptical about these hauntings, believing that they have a political motive. You might also recognise that I don't feel able to express my true feelings, as I am, after all, an Indonesian resident and a guest of the Indonesian government. Jalan Dharma Wangsa Sembilan in Buaya and Baru, surrounded by small parks and looming trees. There is a house known as Rumah Kentang, or Potato House. It now houses AFC International Network, a group of international NGOs focusing on fighting poverty. Here there's a legend about a baby falling into a cauldron of boiling potatoes. Neighbours still report hearing his screams. A security guard claimed that female ghost likes to hug me when I am about to sleep. After 1 a.m. I usually smell boiled potatoes or French fries, just like the ones they have in McDonald's. There is even stories of a karanda, a casket used to carry a body to the site of a grave that moves on its own. Legend has it that a robber killed every member of a family living in the residence. There is a story of Farah, who was in college in Melbourne. She got news that her mother had passed away. She had to return to Jakarta to keep her company with her sister. Farah inherited her late mother's luxurious house, but she was surprised to know that it was the Potato House. Her sister Rika was sad after her mother's death. She became more nervous because they would have to move into the haunted house. As Farah worried about Rika's health, she tried to convince her that everything would be all right. They lived in the house. A series of strange things happened to them. One evening, the spirit came to Rika, who was alone in her room. Rika was extremely frightened and shocked. She wasn't tough enough to bear the burning sensation in her chest and went into a deep coma and was taken to hospital for emergency treatment. Farah's boyfriend, Arman, came to keep her company. He didn't believe what Farah told him. He thought his girlfriend had a lot of stress caused by other problems. After experiencing so many unfortunate incidents, they made up their mind to call a paranormal expert. The paranormal expert recommended that they should leave the house as soon as possible, as indeed many told us about our home in Jakarta prior to my wife losing her mind. As Farah wanted to sell the house, she planned to find another solution. Arman and Farah were at a loss, and they decided to communicate with the guardian of the house through a Jelangkung ritual. In the ritual, the family knew that the cauldron in the kitchen was the root of all evil. Arman advised Farah to throw the cauldron away. After the cauldron was removed, the house became peaceful. Rika was lying in bed, recovered from her coma. After selling the house, Arman proposed to Farah that they live with their sister. The child ghost wanted to take revenge, as he hated that people had thrown away his cauldron. Arman was killed by the child ghost. Farah and her husband lay lifeless on the floor. Farah and Rika were very shocked that the taxi that they took had no driver, and it brought them back to the Potato House. Both of them died at the hands of the evil spirit. Cemeteries are obviously prime haunting spots, but Jeruk Purut Cemetery, located in Kemang, close by my home, is probably the most famous haunted burial ground in Jakarta. According to legend, it's haunted by the ghost of a decapitated pastor who carries his head around in his hands and is often followed by a large black dog. It's said that he's looking for his own grave, which is actually located in another cemetery. Although the priest is not Jeruk Purut's only ghost, he is the most famous. It's said that you're most likely to run into him on Friday nights, but only if you're with an odd numbered group of people. Indra, the caretaker at the South Jakarta graveyard, said that he had taken many curious visitors on nocturnal tours in the land of the dead. Most are youngsters, such as junior high school students, many of whom are taken by their teachers on a rather bizarre initiation ceremony, when older students dress in white sheets and jump out on the unsuspecting initiates. Some superstitious locals believe that the graveyard brings good luck and other mystical help with things like winning lottery tickets or having the power to win someone's heart, usually by means of meditation. Indra said that the story of the Headless Priest was a myth, but he'd seen a lot of other things in the cemetery. There are 4 main haunted points in the graveyard, leading to a tree encircled by high bushes. Behind it was a pitch-dark rivulet. Indra said we only needed to stay for 5 minutes to see a huge, hairy ghoul. One of the most infamous houses in all of Jakarta is an abandoned building in Pondok, Indah, and it has inspired several horror movies and TV shows. It's supposedly at Jalan Pondok Indah 5, but I cannot locate this on Google Maps, despite being close to my home. Although the house was demolished in 2008, the legend associated with it still exists. It's said that in the 1980s a robbery occurred there, resulting in the deaths of a family of foreigners, possibly Japanese, living there with their maid. Their ghosts were said to have haunted the house ever since. The house has been sold and purchased many times since, but none of the residents could bear to stay long in the house, reportedly due to sightings of ghosts. There is also many said that the place had become the devil's nest. There have been plenty of other strange sightings and stories of people going missing. Like a nasi goreng vendor who supposedly disappeared into the house in 2002, leaving nothing but his fried rice cart behind. Or alternatively, the nasi goreng seller reportedly entered the house after receiving an order from someone inside, but never came. The 1987 Bintaro train accident occurred in Pondok Bitung, urban village Bintaro, South Jakarta, on Monday the 19th of October 1987. 2 passenger trains collided, causing 139 fatalities, and at least 300 were injured, and making it the worst rail crash in Indonesia to this day. A train departing from Rakas Bitung station in West Java province, currently in Banten, collided with a train from Tanah Abang station in Jakarta. The investigation indicated negligence from a station officer who gave a safe signal for the train from Rangkas Bitung without confirmation from Kebayoran station. The safe signal was given because of the lines at Sabidara station were crowded. At Manggarai station there is a special area that is used to place train carriages. Some of the train carriages were damaged by accidents, including the former train carriages of the Bintaro tragedy. The carriages are not maintained, so they present a mystical atmosphere. Reportedly, there were sightings of small children running around, gendaruru and female figures. An incident occurred when an electric train parked in Bogor as it suddenly started to run towards the suburbs of Jakarta at 65 kilometres per hour on its own without any technical or manual support. Supposedly the train just stopped on its own without any fatalities reported. Local people believe that the cause of this accident is what they call the Kereta Hantu ghost train and is an effect of ghostly spirits back. In the May of 1998, Indonesia endured 2 weeks of intense rioting. Pressure from the Asian financial crisis had fueled resentment towards a seemingly inept government, leading to a series of riots across central Java, North Sumatra, and the capital, Jakarta. One of the more horrible events occurred in East Jakarta suburb of Klender at the Yogya department store. Looters took important items and set the building on fire. Shopkeepers and visitors had only two choices to make: stay in the mall and get burned alive, or go outside and risk getting beaten to death. People were trampled as they tried to get out, while they simply couldn't find an exit. Police collected 486 charred bodies. Samsul Hilal, then 33 years old, was in the building to look for his nephew and neighbours. He went inside just as the fire broke out on the second floor. From where he stood, he saw piles of tyres around the stairs, blocking the exit. Samsul believed somebody was trapping him and hundreds of others on purpose. Indeed, there is some evidence that the rioting was being encouraged by elements of the police and army, especially against Chinese-Indonesian assets. Investigations revealed that the violence in Jakarta was a result of an internal struggle within the military elite to become Suharto's successor, with evidence that some of the damaged areas were near military installations, with reports that riot organisers had military-like characteristics. Again, I cannot freely express all I know about this incident, but a little research and you will recognise how the legacy of these events are of paramount importance in Indonesia today. Just maybe the ghost stories are designed to keep the Indonesian public from discussing some of the more sinister background to this sad event. The original building was razed and a new mall erected, yet locals treat the new building with trepidation. Within a week of the tragedy, many urban legends began to appear amongst the people. Some of the paranormal occurrences include numerous apparitions of victims asking for help while they burn, invisible children, a woman brushing her hair in the elevator, a huge man in the corridors, in the rooms, and mysterious passengers in public transportation around the area. There would also be the smell of dead bodies and mysterious noises of people screaming. An old phone booth on the ground floor was said to inhibit the spirit of a man with a disfigured face and a burned body.
Sudah